Been on, where else am I? LinkedIn. And here I am, ready to go, live, and waiting for you to all join me. Let me see. Anyone on here? Say hi. If you're already on, go in the comments. I'm kind of always playing around with this stuff, trying to figure out how to work these machines. But yeah, give me a hi. Let me know where you are, what you're doing. Well, you don't have to let me know what you're doing. I'll let you know what I'm doing, because today what I'm going to be doing is talking to Catalina. And the reason I'm going to be talking to Catalina, who I'll introduce you to in a minute, is we're doing storytelling with essential oils. And what that means, I want to explain a little bit about storytelling. This comes out of my certification course that I used to teach at Bastyr University here in the Seattle area where I live. And I am an educator, by the way, just in case you're not really familiar with what I do. Essential oil expert, essential oil innovator, alchemist, whatever you want to call me. That's what I do. And I've been in so many areas with essential oils. Formulating, I had a spa, so I was a clinician as well. And education, like I've just mentioned. So it's been like 30 years I've been doing this. It's been an adventure. And you know what's cool about essential oils? You never get jaded. Never, ever, ever get jaded. It's always something new every day, every time you use essential oil. So that's what we're going to be experiencing today, is something a little bit new. It's going to be absolutely new for me, because every story is different. And I want to explain storytelling a little bit before I bring Catalina on, because there's no real structure to what I'm calling storytelling with essential oils. To give you an idea of what that means, let me start by saying, generally when we blend essential oils, we're blending essential oils to actually create a story, right? So if somebody has a headache, a migraine headache, the story you're creating with the essential oil is pain relief, headache relief, relaxation, stress relief. This is the story you want to create when you blend your essential oils. What this process is basically the opposite. So instead of creating a story from the essential oils, we're going to take a story and create an essential oil blend out of it that represents that story. You know, perfumery in a way does this. I mean, perfumery kind of goes both ways, but a lot of times perfumers, and when I do essential oil perfumery, I work in the same way, is I'm thinking of a story. What's the story that I want to tell with the essential oils? So I actually start with the story. What is that? What's the feeling? What oils represent that story? And then when you watch a perfume commercial, you know, like Johnny Depp with his rock and roll guitar in the desert with the wolves and stuff, that's the idea, the feeling, the story that perfumer wanted to create with that formula. So in a way, that's what we're going to be doing, but we're going to start with the story. I've had some interesting things. This started, like I said earlier, in my course with Bastyr University in the olfactory section of the course. So I do 3 days on olfactory science. And it's a really fun class, the olfactory class, because the olfactory system is so fascinating and interesting and rather elusive on so many levels. And in order to emphasize that elusiveness or that understanding of the way the olfactory system works, I started talking, you know, we at the end of every class, we do a blend based on the theme. And in the olfactory class, I kind of jumped, didn't I, there, but that's okay. In the olfactory class, when the students smell the oils, right? So I'm passing around oils, you know, constantly throughout the courses. All of the oils are numbered. So you do not know what the oil is. And when you smell it, you're writing down a color, a shape, a feeling, anything that represents what you think that oil is, therapeutically, feeling. You're basically writing a story about the oil because it's numbered. You don't know what it is. When you don't know what it is, you don't have that intellectual kick that now defines the oil. You know how that works, right? You smell something that's somebody hands you peppermint. I mean, that's kind of obvious. Everyone's, too familiar with peppermint, and you smell it. And if you know it's peppermint, you already have your idea. Oh, it's energizing, but it's not energizing for everybody. But if that's what you think, that's the story that oil is going to tell you, because that story is already in your head. So with this course, numbered ideas, instead of creating formulas based on the olfactory system, what we did was created stories based on storytelling. And some of the examples, I don't know if you're familiar with the trickster in it's traditional storytelling. The trickster, walks down the street and he's got a blue side of his hat and a red side of his hat. And so the people on this side see blue, these people on this side see red. And so when these people get together, they go, hey, nice blue hat he had, didn't it? Blue hat, he had a red hat. And so they get into this argument. So the story kind of creates this idea of the trickster. And so we created a formula based on the story of the trickster. In China, they were really good at this in China. And I don't know if this was a novel or what, but the story was based on a Chinese story and a more modern story about a gentleman who schooled in Oxford in England, and he came back home to China, and he was missing it, and so the story goes, it was a woman, and missing the spring air, which is a cool breeze and a warm sun, and all of these factors. And so the story was really beautiful in the way that it was told to me, not being familiar with the story. And as we were developing this formula, what we did was we came up with the idea that this would be called fulfillment, because that seemed to be the theme of the story, is that the character lacked fulfillment. I'm sorry, I'm trying to adjust a few things here that aren't working quite right. Oh, there. Okay. Now I feel much better about my technology. Anyway, technology glitches are always kind of fun. That's part of the story. So anyway, yes, China, the story. The story was, so much about longing, and it was about, this man was missing something. And so what we wanted to portray in the blend was the fulfillment that he was missing. What was really interesting about this situation of creating a blend from this story is when I passed the final formula around the room, a bunch of the students started crying. This is the impact of idea, storytelling. And when you actually smell the fragrance with this idea in your head, it creates that emotion, it creates that feeling. So this is what we're doing when we're storytelling. And if you're a spa therapist, wellness therapist, any kind of therapist, or anybody that's making blends for other people, listen to the stories that people are telling you, because part of what you're trying to do is you're trying to, there's so many different things you're trying to do. I mean, just like in fulfillment, if somebody's feeling some longing and missing, and, they don't have that fulfillment in their life, you can create your therapeutic blend. You may be working on, skin condition, eczema or acne or something like that. But you may find that it's the story that they tell that's going to guide your therapeutic choice on your essential oils. Okay, so this is the value of storytelling and understanding what storytelling is all about. So what we're going to do today, in a second here, I'll bring up Catalina, and we'll have a little chat just to introduce you guys to Catalina. She'll introduce herself, tell you a bit about herself, because it's part of her story, no matter what story she comes up with, because I don't really know what she's going to do, because like I said, there was the trickster, and then there was a novel. And, some of the other examples, somebody wanted to create a blend based around a story of her going out to her beehives. That one was fun to do, because I had no idea how to bring that to life through an essential oil. it's the process that actually creates the understanding of what you're going to do. So as I listen to what Catalina will be telling us today, I'm going to write down oils. And so, I'm going to have to interrupt her every once in a while just so I can ask questions and kind of get a feel, because I'm going to show you how I formulate, like I said in the description of this, in real time. I'm going to be showing you how I actually formulate essential oil blends, no matter what the process is, no matter what therapeutic purpose I'm doing this for. What I'm going to show you is how I work generally with everything. Because, hey, just as a general rule, which is kind of outside of the storytelling thing, write every formula down. It's so frustrating if you make a formula and you didn't write it down and it's one of the best blends you've ever made in your entire life and you can't repeat it because you didn't write it down. So the process through this storytelling is I am going to write everything down and show you the process and I'll explain what my process is, why am I selecting certain oils, and it's very subjective. You're going to be getting it from my mind, from my experience. We all have different experiences. We all have different understanding of how essential oils work, what we know about essential oils, what oils we like to use. And so the input and the oils that are selected are going to be coming from me. So it's going to be my interpretation of Catalina's story. So I think we can bring Catalina up. I think I can see she's ready. Hi, Catalina.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me well?
Oh, I can hear you so well
Okay, great.
and see you
Thank
so well.
thank
So really appreciate you doing this. This is so fun. And
thank
just so everyone knows, Catalina and I have talked before. And so, we have some history. We understand each other on from the things that we have talked about. And so I have some information already that I'll be working with. And do I need to explain anything else about that? No, I do not. So, Catalina, just kind of introduce yourself. Let everyone know who you are.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jim, for having me here. I think this is a very special space to
Thanks.
start looking more holistically at the things that are science, the science behind the essential oils. I think it's fascinating how it is attached to emotions and to memories and to, as you were saying, storytelling, which is what we're going to talk about today. And, I've always thought that, well, not always, but I have learned that you are the story that you tell about yourself. And this is not just for others, but also for yourself. So, like, constantly we are talking with ourselves. And I like to go within every now and then when I meditate or whenever I journal or, other practices, and catch myself sometimes giving myself a speech or a story that I don't want to tell myself, or I don't want it to make part of me. So I think it is interesting how life has taken me to understand this. So, to tell you a little bit about myself, I am from Bogota, Colombia, originally. Um, and I lived in the United States for almost 9 years of my life. I very recently came back to my home country, and I had a 360 life shift. It was, jumping with both feet and with my whole body, really.
Yeah.
um, when I decided to change on my career path. So when I was living in New York, and I was there for fashion after
Cool.
I graduated school from Colombia. And through my trajectory there, I made a transition into home and interiors. And I was working with artificial intelligence. So I was very much in the back end of machine learning. And, even when this wasn't popular yet before the pandemic. And then I came across biophilia. And I started to become extremely obsessed with biophilia, biophilic design, biophilia, the concept itself, like the very original root of the word. And from there, I feel like my life started completely changing. And the story I'm going to tell you about today is related to how I feel like I started to connect with my way of biophilia, with my inner nature, and with the one that surrounds me, because it's also projecting the story that I tell to myself inward. So um, that's a little bit about my background.
Mhm.
I am currently bringing the scientific methodology and more like the formal application of biophilic design into Colombia and expanding it in Latin America, because it is not something that has been officialized here yet. And that's why I came back from the United States.
Cool. I just want to tell anyone that doesn't know what biophilia, biophilic
Yes.
refers to, is that biophilia as a term from biology refers to our genetic desire or genetic coding to be in nature, to be with living things. And it's go into the forest, which is this, it kind of was popularized through forest bathing, the whole term biophilia. And forest bathing practice that originated out of Japan was going into the forest. It reduced stress and increased immunity and all these kind of good things. And it was related to our genetic coding, our genetic desire to be in nature and be with nature. And so biophilic design is about designing around, well, explain biophilic design,
Yeah,
Catalina, because
of course. Well, it is true. There have been different branches, and the development of different practices that allude to what biophilic design is. But biophilic design, it's the application of different patterns, attributes, and a methodology that has been developed to enhance well-being through the built environment, and we do this in co-creation with nature. So it's not just about integrating. Most people think about plants right away, because we tend to think of nature as something external to our bodies, and as the green, as the landscape, and sometimes we forget that there are many other shades in nature, that there are every being also is nature, including ourselves, our cells, every part of
mhm.
our body. So basically, biophysical design wants to just translate the benefits of that we get when we are in direct contact with the natural world, and translate them into our designs, and get that same benefit of forest bathing or other practices, to bring them into our indoor spaces, architecture, and everything we create.
Very cool. That gives me an idea, Catalina. One day we'll have to do a live stream based on biophilia and biophilic design. I mean, I have my course out there on Habit Harmonia, on biophilic scent design,
Hmm.
which to me was just putting a new name to essential oils in the air, but with focus. Anyway, so okay, let's do your story now. So we talked a little bit about what the concept here is. So just go ahead and start your story. I'm going to pull up this screen here,
Okay.
which is where right there. Okay, I'm going to pull that up. Actually, I'm going to remove it so you can start your story and we can see more of you. You get too
Okay.
small. You get too small when I have my screen up. But what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to start writing in the oil. So I may kind of interrupt to ask questions, or just so that I can explain why I'm doing what I'm doing, just because this is like a lesson. But go for it.
Okay, well, thank you. So, the story I'm going to tell, as I mentioned before, it's pretty much related to that of the way that we present ourselves to others and to ourselves. So, one of the biggest epiphanies I've had, and this might sound cliche, but I think that I had a moment of embodying and embedding this when I decided to come back to Colombia. And I'll talk about it through a living being that I feel so close to me, and that has taught me that I belong to nature, that I am part of it, and that I also have very unique ways of communicating with my inner nature, and with we can call the universe, God, spirituality, everything that goes beyond the science, and the things that might sometimes not have an explanation. So this is the hummingbird. I
Aha.
have this picture that was a gift from a photographer friend, and when I came to Colombia, I remember even before I made the decision to move back, I was traveling a lot um, to visit. And I remember one day I was working out at a park, and I saw in a tree a hummingbird. And I remember when I was looking at the hummingbird, I was thinking, wow, this animal is so gentle. Like people might not even see this animal. Most of the times it's completely seamless the way it moves everywhere because it doesn't make like a lot of noise, and its size is very small, and it's also very elegant. It's so beautiful to look at.
Mhm.
But I was thinking, and I was looking at the hummingbird thinking, wow, I think I feel identified with the hummingbird because from the outside, you might think, wow, what a beautiful little animal. We romanticize this a lot, but we don't think about how much energy it takes up, how many heartbeats. I think it's around 200 heartbeats it has in a minute. And if you look at it, if you guys have seen a hummingbird, it's flying, and it's so fast the way it moves its wings that it almost feels like they are like you cannot see the shape of the wings unless it stops flying, no? So I started to think of that moment, which was deciding if I was going to come back to Colombia or to start my career as a biophilia professional in the United States. And I thought, wow, I think I really need to come back, and it's going to be a hustle, and I'm going to be in a hummingbird state. So this stage, or this part of the story, I'm going to divide it in three, is the calling. Um,
Okay. Let me do some stuff
yes.
because you've given me some good stuff. I actually have two hummingbird feeders on my balcony
Ah!
because I think I come from Boston where I mean you were in New York. Did you ever see a hummingbird in New York?
No.
Yeah, it's the Northeast. Somebody told me they have them there, but no. So I'm just fascinated, like from what you're explaining. So I put it out there, and it let me get so close to do a video one time, and so I did that, and then I slowed it down so you can really see the energy. So I have some oil ideas here already. So first of all, the first one that comes to mind is frankincense because when you're talking about the spiritual aspect, I forgot exactly what you said. I should have stopped you there, but the story was going so well, and it gave me two ideas. But if do you know much about essential oils? Do you know like if you think of what oil on a spiritual level, like I'm thinking frankincense, that would be part of this story, because frankincense is kind of that third eye, intuition, clarity, kind of gets you rise above the physical and to get to the informational, I call it the quantum field or spirit, whatever.
Hmm.
So does that make sense on where I'm going with that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I even think I'm not very familiarized with the, essential oils selection, but I think about it through plants. So maybe
Mhm.
something like blue lotus, something of that kind in terms of effect. That, as you said, it's like very touching, like the third eye, like the intuition awakening. So I feel like that's what the stage was about.
Okay. Um, so I'm going to just leave frankincense there for now. The other oil, and this, I think I use this oil every time I ever do a blend. I would, but it just fits here so well because it has the personality of a hummingbird.
Oh, I love
It's it's called Cape chamomile, and Cape chamomiles are just a word that is used a little too often to describe a few different oils.
it.
And so I'm trying to move my screen so I can actually see you. You guys can't see what I'm doing here, but I know what I'm doing when I pause like that and have to move things around. Anyway,
Sure.
because my file here covers up the screen. Anyway, Cape Chamomile comes out of South Africa, the Cape Town area,
Hmm.
and it's, when you think of chamomile, it's relaxing and calming, which the Cape Chamomile has that. And you mentioned that about the hummingbird, I was seeing what you were talking about, from watching hummingbirds say, come to my balcony. And it's a very, very energetic thing that they're doing, but they just seem so chill and calm about it. And so Cape Chamomile, and I hadn't thought of this until you came up with your story, it has that kind of energy. It has that resonance of a buzz, like the flapping wings really fast, but very smooth, very calm. So that's where we're going with that. Okay,
Love
we
it.
have 2 oils so far. Let's go.
I love this. I love this, and I love that you are referencing a flower because I actually think that hummingbirds are getting the nectar from the flowers constantly, and
Mhm.
they move with so much intention. They move with purpose.
Yeah,
I like to think that they are very precise in the way that they use their energy because they're not going to waste it. They're going to honor the energy and the ability they have to go from flower to flower, a long beak that allows them to go deep into the flower without harming it. And so I love that you mentioned chamomile
yeah,
as a reference to, you know.
cool.
So, okay, so when I started to look at the hummingbird, I remember that I declared myself like I am, I am a hummingbird because I felt so identified with that hustle that is so seamless. And I remember this, like this feeling very vividly because a lot of people were saying, wow, it's so great what you're about to do, coming here, pioneering and bringing in something that hasn't been translated nor integrated yet into the Latin American culture. That's great. And I was thinking, yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a lot of work too. And, I was excited about it. I did not know what I was getting myself into, but I did already envision that this was going to be a lot of work. So, I wanted to, in a way, convey the energy of the hummingbird. And I remember that I was starting to live a moment of synchrony. And this happened since I found biophilia. It was always implicit in my life, but when I was aware and conscious about this, and especially choosing that path as a professional, I remember that everything started to be like in synchrony, this synergy. I was so aware of it. And so, when sometimes you think, wow, what a coincidence, I was thinking of that, or that's how my life started to be since that moment till this day. So I remember that I went to a trade show in Colombia. That was during the holiday, and that was 2023, so pretty recent. And I remember I went into the jewelry section because this was about craftsmanship, and artisans selling their stuff. And I was called like right away. I was drawn by a booth of jewelry that had this and display, and this is an ear cuff. And I
Ah,
remember that um, the owner of the shop, she told me, I want to put it on you because I want to take some pictures. And when I did, and I looked at it in the mirror, I thought, wow, this is such a beautiful, powerful piece. What is it? And she said, this is the hummingbird. And so I thought,
oh man.
wow. you know of course, you see the beak, you see the colors, and
How
I thought
cool is that?
right, it's such
Wow.
a beautiful interpretation of
Yeah.
the movement. And I think that's one of the things that's most fascinating to me, like the wings flapping, but also seeing the colors, the
Yeah.
vibrancy of them. So I remember that I received the information. The hummingbirds are the only bird species that is able to move and to fly in different directions.
Huh.
And I thought, wow, there's another reason there why I feel like the hummingbird, because I feel like you have to be very flexible. You have to be able to switch right away. I don't know if, um, when you are getting something very unexpected thrown your way and you have to react right away. I feel like that's kind of the energy. Like you have to be very in tune with everything that's around you and be able to react really fast. So I got that information there, and that's when I decided to get this piece because I
Wow.
felt, you know,
Well, somebody in New York saw a hummingbird. So that's cool. That's really cool. Okay, as you were talking, I was doing my thing over here. So I want to show you what I did, which is to add a couple of different oils. I did Atlas cedarwood and sandalwood. Not that both of them would go in this blend. And the reason I did those is because, in a way, you were talking about having some inner stability. And when you think about a tree and its trunk and that strength and that
mhm,
stability that it has, that's where, I chose Atlas cedarwood because it comes from the wood, comes from the trunk of the tree. Sandalwood also comes from, boy, they have to rip the whole tree apart to get the sandalwood. And it has stability, but then the sandalwood actually also adds what I put frankincense in there for, kind of that spiritual connection, that beyond the boundaries kind of feel.
mhm,
Um, and then I forgot what you said, but I put neroli in there and spelt it wrong.
mhm.
So let's spell neroli properly. Why do I keep doing that? I must want it to be neroil because I just want to say it that way. Okay, I did it again. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm hitting the wrong key.
Technology sometimes.
No, it's my fingers. It really
Oh,
is.
okay.
Nerol with an L and an I. Okay, I'm doing this right. Anyway, it just looks the same on my screen, and I don't have my glasses on. That's what the problem is. Anyway, hi, how are you? And neroli, neroli is orange blossom, and neroli, in similar ways to the way I explained the Cape chamomile, and now I can't remember what you said that I wrote neroli down, but I wrote it down right away when you mentioned it, and it was again about that energetic feel.
Uh-huh.
It's heartfelt as well. You didn't really mention much heart, but it sounds like you have a lot of heart in your story
Yeah.
as well. And so the neroli, if you want to go with chakras, it's a third eye also. Um, but it's I'm not going to explain too much more. It's what I said about Cape chamomile, but that floral beauty and heart, third eye, and it's very enlightening. And so it sounds like what in your story that you've really had to make some decisions. You've really had to be kind of conscious about where you're going, what you were doing, and so that's what I have there so far. Okay, let's do more
Yeah.
story.
I wonder if it had something to do also with, that information I got that it's the only bird that can fly in all directions and that it has to have like a really fast capacity of reaction because
It fits there, but I wrote this before you said that, but it actually that part, it's almost like what I was getting from your story. You explained further by talking about the the hummingbird that way. So
okay.
yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, I love it. Okay. So that's where the first part of the story ends. That was the calling. And
Yeah,
I heard the calling and I responded to it. So when I responded to the calling, I entered this stage called the messenger. And so this stage is very interesting because I remember I had already made the official decision and also actionating towards coming back to Colombia after 9 years of living in the United States. And I was super excited about it. I started just like to move my stuff back and also settle here. I had been visiting, coming, moving back and forth. Um, just to, stay close to my family, to my friends, to the people that I grew up with, and also because you always miss your home when you have a good relationship with it. And
Mhm.
even when you don't, sometimes you start missing what you don't have anymore. So um, I was super excited and driven by that emotion, of coming back to the place that I don't have to leave now every time that I am saying bye to go back to New York. And with that momentum, I remember that I started to um, be more conscious about the decisions of what I needed to do in order to recharge, to stay centered, to stay grounded. And it's referencing a lot of what you just mentioned about that, inner stability. Like, I like a lot how you reference a tree, a trunk that's very
Mhm.
steady, because I felt at that moment that that's exactly what I needed to give myself. So I remember during that holiday time, I um, decided to go solo on a trip to the coast and spend New Year's by myself. And that was, the first time I ever thought about doing something like this. So I remember that I went to this place, and, it was just for a couple of days to kind of disconnect from everything and give it a new start to everything, like moving back to the country. At that moment, I was also ending a relationship, and it was so many changes, like the career shift and the way that I wanted to start to see myself. So I felt like I needed to go into the ocean to um, in a way kind of let go and to be cleansed completely of the things that wouldn't serve me to start this journey officially here. So when I decided to go to the coast, I remember that well, here in Colombia, traditionally, we like to use something new when it's New Year's. It's like, a thing, whether that's a whole outfit or an accessory, whatever. And I decided that that was going to be the hummingbird piece for me.
Mhm.
So I took it with me, and I first didn't know what to expect when I booked this place. I went to a place that I had already been in once, in an island, in an archipelago, so by mangroves, absolutely beautiful. It's called Archipelago of San Bernardo. It's a must if you ever think about coming to the Colombian Caribbean. And I remember that I became friends with the staff, and I had a blast. They treated me like I was family. Like I
Mhm.
was, if
Cool.
they were going to do any activities program for the guests, because there was a huge family celebrating New Year's there. Um, they they would ask me if I wanted to come and help with, just the logistics of doing the snorkeling and things like that. And it was wonderful. Like, this trip was absolutely magical. And I remember talking with the administrator. We became friends, and we would talk at night, just stargazing, because you can see beautiful stars from there. So I remember I started to mention the hummingbird. He asked me like what I was doing, where I was at in my life, and I told him I'm a hummingbird right now. And I kept mentioning the hummingbird here, the hummingbird there. He was like, "This is so interesting," because one of my close friends does shamanic chanting, and
Wow.
he likes to cleanse spaces, the energy, with a drum, and it has a hummingbird painted on the instrument. And so, I kept thinking and talking about the hummingbird. And in New Year's Eve, I remembered that I started talking about the hummingbird again. I wore my piece, with a white outfit. And I remember when we were saying bye, because the next day I was coming back to Bogota, um, the admin told me, uh, I have a gift for you, and I have been keeping this since I went to Peru 6 months ago, and I never thought knew why I bought it. It wasn't for myself, but this is for you. Like, before you leave, I think this is something that you have to take home with you. I don't know what it means, and I don't know what you're in right now, what's going on with your life, but there's something about the hummingbird. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's happening? And I I didn't know what to expect. And and so this guy hands me a little box, and this box is, it contained this little bag from Peru. And I remember the box had some of, have you ever seen the Nazca lines? Like, are you familiar with? So there are these huge pictograms that are in Nazca. So it's like a desert,
Mhm.
and it's a mystery why they are there. And they have different shapes that are, you know, perfect drawings. You can see a monkey like going upstairs. You can see a spiral, a flower, an eagle, an astronaut. And when I went to Peru, I remember that I flew the Nazca lines, and the pilot was showing us each of the figures, and it was impressive, like to
Well,
see from the up, like from the upper side, like how you can see the perfect shapes. And we were wondering like why they were there. And the theory of them is that, we're trying to communicate with beings that are up there, like in the moon or a
the space,
station.
the space guys, the
Yeah.
aliens. There you go.
Yeah, I didn't want to say aliens, but yeah,
I know.
basically.
It's that word has become kind of weird. All right, so I have a bunch of different
Great.
ideas here.
Fantastic.
So one of the things that you started with is rooted. Like you're going back to your home, and those are your roots. And so the oils that I'm going to write things down that I might not use. And so I want to write vetiver down because vetiver is the most root of rooted oils. And it could be ginger, um, turmeric. I don't know. There's a few different ones.
Mm.
Vetiver fits the best here. And then when you talked about messenger, I was going, whoa, what mercury influenced essential oil do I have? Which I don't know. Um, you know, I don't hold that information very often. I know I've read it, as astrological signs and things like that.
Yeah.
But rosemary comes to mind on how I would do that. Now, the other ones that also came to mind, because I forgot what you mentioned, but it would be the mints, like either spearmint or peppermint, but they don't feel right in this story.
Mm.
Those two oils. I could write them down just so you know that what I was hearing and what I was feeling and what I wanted to do would work there. And then for communicating with extraterrestrial species. That would be, I guess, the appropriate word, right? Um, that would be, that's where you get into Cape chamomile and frankincense and even rosemary. So we've kind of got that covered. Okay, you got a last part of
Yeah.
your story. I want to make this blend.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, rosemary resonates a lot with me because I have a close relationship with it, and it's a plant that I have been communicating with a lot in terms
Oh,
of,
cool.
memory, um, ancestral reminiscing. So I think it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Pau diacro would also work in this blend.
Mm,
Um, that's Ecuadorian, I think.
wow.
That oil comes from the wood, considered really spiritual. So I just don't have any in stock, so I can't. I'm going to make this blend for you, by the way. We talked about that. I'm going to send this to you. All right. So do you have? Is there more story? Do we need to do a final end to this?
Yes. So before I finish this stage, two details that happen here that were, huge for this part of the story. So one of them was when I looked at the pictograms, I asked this guy, like, have you ever seen them? Like, did you see them when you went on your trip to Peru? And he said no. So I told him, I'm going to show you a video of what I saw when I went, and you have to go back there. Like, it was like me encouraging him, like, this is a must thing for returning to Peru. You have to see the Nazca lines. And so I said I would show it to him after I opened the gift. And so when I opened the gift, it's this bag and it has these tiny little earrings. I don't know if you can see, but
Sort of. Yeah.
it's they're hummingbirds.
Ah, cool.
So the wings here, the colorful ones, the tail at the bottom, and then the beak. Well, they're so tiny for me to show.
Yeah.
But when I saw this, I remember I started crying right away because I felt overwhelmed and I thought, what is going on? Like I thought, what is this? And I was crying. I remember that this guy was like, it's okay. Like, I don't know what's going on. I know this is really weird, but I just, this is for you. I have no doubt and I'm not sure what for, but you just have to take them home. And so I, I remember that once I calmed down, um, I showed him the video. And when we zoomed into the first figure that shows in the video, the pictogram was a hummingbird. And so I started
Wow.
crying again.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. This was,
A lot of hummingbird synergy going on there.
yes. And it gave me lots of goosebumps. And I
Wow.
remember that his reaction was like, wow. And, you know, his face was in complete awe. I was in awe as well, but I was just so overwhelmed because I felt like I was getting a direct message, but I didn't know how to decode it. So that's what was overwhelming. And
Wow.
so um, that's where that part of the story ends, so that we can step into the next stage. I don't know if you want to pause or.
No, go ahead. What just because we're running out of time, so if you kind of
Mhm.
I want you to edit this part of the story.
Yeah.
I'm actually creating the formula as you speak.
Okay, perfect. So the last part of this story is I don't even know how to name it yet. You guys maybe can help me or maybe you can help me. But it's the moment where I went back to feeling like I belong and that the universe is holding me, that God is holding me, that also, I am vibrating with the energies that I choose and I am becoming the story that I tell myself. So at first I started to declare myself as the hummingbird. So this was like the reassurance that, okay, you want to be it, here you are, here you go. So when I came back home, I remember that I started to see the hummingbird less. Like I always see a lot of hummingbirds around. I wasn't aware of them, to be honest. I didn't care for them, and I found out that Colombia is actually the country where the highest number of species of hummingbirds. So you know when I started to be more aware of this animal, I literally realized that they're always flying around, like close to me through my window, my condo, it's full of them, etc. So when I came back from the trip, I wanted to see it, like to look at the hummingbirds and be like, what's going on? Kind of ask them, like, tell me. And I could not see them. And so I started to think, well, maybe I made this up in my head. Like maybe this is just too many coincidences. That's it. But I went out for a run. And while I was thinking of that, and when I was thinking, maybe I made this story up in my head, I came across something on the floor while I was running outside. And it's this. It's a little hummingbird feather.
Oh,
And
it looks big for a hummingbird. From the
nah,
tail.
look at my finger. Well, I have very small hands. Um, I don't know what else to reference it with.
Huh.
My pinky. It's it's as big as my pinky, and I have very very tiny hands. I'm very
Yeah.
petite. Um, so when I saw this on the floor, I thought, I stopped. It was like a hard stop. Like I almost fell because I was wondering, like, is this a joke? I
Mhm.
picked it up. It was so um like it called my attention right away because it has these colors that they're like blue and kind of like greenish, and I picked it up. I remember I looked everywhere because I was like, is someone teasing me? No one knows about this. What's going on? And I picked it up. I didn't even know if it was hummingbirds. Then I later on confirmed that it was. And so this was like the confirmation of whenever you doubt it, don't worry. We'll send you a sign and you'll have it very tangible. And so it was almost an invitation from nature, from my inner nature too, and from the one around me to say, trust. Even when you don't have to be bombarded by hummingbirds, and it doesn't have to be so romantic or so, like Pocahontas with the hummingbird flying around her all the time. But just trust in the things that you receive, in the things that you see, and in the synchronicity. And so that was like me really coming back to my home, to my body, and feeling like I do belong, and that there are things that are beyond what I can explain in science, to believe and to connect that, connect the gaps between what we call spirit and science. And so um, that is the last part of my story.
Wow. Cool. You just, this was a great story. And it was fun to create around it, from what I was doing here. All right. So I didn't need to add too much, but I decided Pau Diarco was something that I can't say that with a Spanish accent. I'm sorry.
It's all
It
good.
it's it needed to go in there because I don't use it much, and I actually do have I think I have some back there somewhere, and maybe I should. Maybe you're
Wow.
inspiring me to change some of the things I'm doing. Okay, so what I did here is I have a formula based on. Oh, I wish it would stop disappearing. Okay, I think I reviewed most of these oils.
Hmm.
So just to kind of go over it again, the grounding, the root, I think it does belong in there. I don't think it needs much.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm going to cut this back. You can see what I did. It's like I need 100%. So when I
Hmm.
formulate in my head, which is what I do, this is how I make all my blends. I can smell this
Wow.
in my head. And when you're working with essential oils, if you do it long enough, they're always there. You don't even need them in front of you. And so I'm blending based on percentages. So when I do this, no matter how much I make, I can formulate it so that it works with these percentages. Um, and each oil has a different dynamic, so a different expression. So when I have only 5%, fairly low, of vetiver, it's because I don't need a lot to create what I want. And it's and through your story, even though it sounds really important, that move back to your roots, back to your
Hmm.
home,
Hmm.
it doesn't need to be a big part of the story in this blend. It just needs to exist, right? So the
Yes.
vetiver is at a smaller amount. The Atlas cedarwood, which it's really core. The Atlas cedarwood comes out of Morocco,
Mm.
and for me, there's something beyond just a very woody um, feel. That what I talked about, stability and strength. It does have, like, referencing chakras again, uh, the second chakra and the third, actually. So it's really about, your creativity, but also your presence in the world is
Wow.
is is how this one works. But it's, core. Like it's the core of the wood or the tree, and this is why I have it in there. I might bring that back down a little bit as I talk about this.
Hmm.
The Pau d'Arco is
I love it.
again wood, but there's something resonant in its spirituality, and I can't use that much because it's way overpowering in a blend.
Wow.
But that's good because I don't want the influence to be overpowering. In fact, I might even bring this down a little bit more.
Okay.
as I do the blend. Frankincense kind of covers everything.
Mm.
Frankincense is the intuition. It's our let me see, did I put enough in there? Yeah. Um, like I said, third eye, the crown chakra. So it's our connection. You mentioned spirit, God, frankincense. That's why they use it in church ceremonies. And I
Wow.
wish I was more familiar with some of the South American oils, because for you, that would be what I'd want to do.
Mm.
So if I were more familiar and I said, oh, I have this oil and this oil and this oil, like copaiba. You familiar with that? Actually, it's copaiba. I always say that wrong. Out of Brazil. It's a resin.
Oh. Oh wow.
And it didn't feel right for this blend. It could go in there though,
Mm-hmm.
because it's another oil that just has a dimension to it that expresses what your story is. But I have enough, and it's more that core part of the story. The sandalwood, it's similar to the frankincense and the pau d'arco. And
Mm-hmm.
so frankincense is, it's just got, I have a lot of core going on here. And then we get to the rosemary, which I think, no, that fits. Rosemary is giving some protection,
Mm.
I think. And that wasn't something that came up in your story. What came up here, and the reason I chose this, I just see it as a messenger. And
Mm.
boy, there was a lot of hummingbird messenger going on in your story.
Yes. I,
Man, that's amazing. That's
yeah.
just amazing. Always something to pay attention to, right?
Yes.
I guess
Absolutely.
especially when the message is that strong, you know, it's like that couldn't get any louder. You little hummingbird, you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. I've been referring to you as the mycelium, but now I'm gonna have to. You've got now you've got earth and sky, mycelium and hummingbird.
Yes.
Those go well together.
They
It's nice.
do. They do.
Yeah.
I think they convey a very similar energy, one in earth and the other one underground. And
Yeah.
I also love that you did mention Pau de Arco, because I came across that uh, flower in the coast when I was thinking about this transition in another trip, and I smelled the flower. It smells beautiful. And later on in an oracle, a botanical oracle, I saw that the representation of the Pau de Arco flower is like said to be one of the most beautiful trees of the world. And I
Well,
thought, wow, like this is incredible. It's so synchronized with everything that
yeah.
I.
I don't know if they have an essential oil from the flower, because the essential oil generally comes from the wood of the tree.
Mm,
But it has an incredibly beautiful fragrance. It's
wow,
very unique
I
and
love.
hard to describe. It does have a floral component to it, along
Mhm.
with a wood, along with I don't know how to describe it. No, it's really beautiful. So yeah, so the rosemary, I put that in as the mercury messenger as well. Um,
Mm,
but it does have a good protection to it. And then the Cape chamomile, which we explained, is the hummingbird part of this.
beautiful.
And that has that movement. Cape, it must be why I love it so much. I hadn't thought of it as a hummingbird analogy, but it has that movement where do you want it to go? And it can be still, it can move quickly, it can turn. And that was a cool thing when I told you I videoed the hummingbird. It was showing me all those movements, you know, and it was really funny because it was facing me, and then it decided to leave, and it just turned like this, sat for a second, and then took off. Cool.
Wow, wow.
So Cape chamomile, that's absolutely the hummingbird. And then neroli is that kind of combines the things I said about frankincense, pau d'arco, and Cape chamomile. It has all of those with a very beautiful floral feel to it.
Wow.
I think I think that's the blend. So I'm gonna formulate that and send it to you as a roll on, so you can put it on. I actually told you I was going to send you some Cape chamomile too,
Thank
but I
you.
wasn't going to label it. so that you wouldn't know what it was. I'm going to send you a few different oils, but from my description, you're absolutely going to know. Okay, I want to get to see if there's any questions here, because we've kind of gone tight. Anybody anywhere have a question? No questions. Okay, fine. I have questions. Actually, I've asked all my questions, but yeah. So this the storytelling thing. This is the kind of work I love to do, and as therapist, so in a way, this was a therapy session. That if you came to me with an issue, I would have looked for this story, and that's where a lot of therapists miss out. That are doing like skin therapy or something like that. They're always looking for, what'd you eat? What'd you do? Where do you live? They want to know your environment, stuff like that, what you eat. But it's who you are that's expressed through your skin. And I have a system I call outside, inside, out. And I think you mentioned that, but you called it something different, but it's outside, inside, out. Mm-hmm. So we're all exposed to a certain environment. And in your story, that environment had a lot of hummingbird in it. But it also had where the hummingbird, expressions were coming from. So it came from the hummingbird. It came from an artist in New York. It came from, somebody in a place where you stayed that gifts you with hummingbirds and, just amazing things. Was it? Yeah, it was the hummingbird earrings, right? He gave you?
Yeah.
And then what was that the only thing in that bag, or was there, when you were talking about I can't remember what it's called, with all the
the Nazca lines? No, that was like almost like an invitation to show a video and then seeing the hummingbird there again. So
okay, cool. Yeah. So if I were doing this as a therapist, I listen to all that, and this is the things that you're exposed to out here. But your story was how you internalize that information. And that's what I look for. And it's not, the story is a great way to do it. But, if I'm doing a therapy session and you had like a skin issue or, health issue, I'd also want to know what your environment is. I would want to know what you're eating, but not because of what's inside. I want to know, is it organic? Where did it come from? And, if I could, who picked it? Because everything we're exposed to, here's the mycelium connection. Everything is interconnected, so where things are coming from, the more you understand about where things are coming from, the better we can be when it comes to understanding how it's being internalized. Because once you know what's out there, how a person expresses it, they're internalizing it. It's like, I use this reference a lot. You could, people in the same workspace with the same boss, one person is like, whatever. The other person could be freaking out every time the person, the boss opens their mouth, right? Because it's how we internalize that outside information. And then how we internalize it, what comes out. And so in your story, you were talking about the things that you were exposed to. You talked about how you internalized it, and then your expression through the story is how it comes out. So this is a process that I use. And, just so I can let people know where I'm at, let me kind of put my stuff up here. So I have, whoops. This is a way to get in touch with me. If you want to know how to do this for all my therapist friends and all the people who I work with, this is where to get me for consulting and everything else. And I could teach you how to do these stories with Catalina. You'll never get Catalina unless you have Catalina, because she's amazing. This was such a great story to have. And so I can do that too now.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so if you're on YouTube watching this, go ahead and push all the right buttons, which is subscribe and like and share and everything else. And LinkedIn, do the same thing, like and share and repost, and you'll be able to watch Catalina again and again and again. But I think we've kind of run over. I really appreciate your time, Catalina. It's such a beautiful story. And I'm going to disconnect, but we're going to talk later on. I'll connect, and we'll be talking again soon. But for everyone else, hey, that was it. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.